Kính chào quý vị mới đến với chương trình. Tôi phải trở lại bởi vì cái chương trình hôm nay tiếp tục với lời khai của bà Fani Willis. Và tôi sẽ tường trình với quý vị, bà ra bà tấn công rất là mạnh.
I thought I had a law practice. So this is not correct. I'm sure it's just I didn't have any asset forfeiture cases. So I had one case where they had took one of my clients' money at the airport. I don't know if that's what they're I don't know. Paltry array. I did have family law cases. I guess that's what they're talking about. And clients who couldn't pay their bills.
Những cái cuộc thẩm vấn này đó, nó có nhiều cái sự gọi là phản ứng mạnh đó quý vị. Có phản ứng rất là mạnh của bà Fani Willis.
You know when you paid your tax lien? I don't. You don't? Do you know if you paid it? I know I've paid some taxes. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. Did you tell anyone at Fulton County Board of County Commissioners about your relationship with Mr. Wade? No. Did you disclose your relationship to anybody at Fulton County? No, I don't think so. And as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Fulton County, I assume that you're familiar with the county code and ordinances?
I've said we're not going to cover that in this hearing, Ms. Merchant.
I'm sorry, Judge?
I think we said we weren't going to cover the county regulations.
Okay, and I won't. Let me ask you this then. So,
Bà tấn công bà Merchant, luật sư của phe ông Trump rất là mạnh.
But would this be different because it's a potential for impeachment?
Yes. What did you ask me?
Ms. Merchant, if you could re-ask the question.
Okay. Are you aware that Fulton County requires you to disclose any relationship with someone that you're doing business with? I'm not aware, and I know often that things are confused with state constitutional officers in county, but I'm not aware. Okay. So it's your understanding that you don't have a duty to disclose the
She's
relationship?
answered that question. Let's keep going.
Bà Merchant hỏi những câu rất là vô lý và ông Scott McAfee nó dẹp qua đi.
What are you talking? I don't understand. Did you keep track? Did you keep a ledger? Did you keep track of it? So I've only given him cash, as I mentioned, 3 or 4 times. There's no ledger. This is.
Bà ở này hỏi bà có kiếm cái tiền, bà xài tiền mặt không? Bà có kiểm điểm, bà có làm sổ? Bà nói không, tôi đã nói rồi, tôi không có kiểm sổ cái vấn đề này.
Who were you referring to when you suggested that Mr. Roman's motion to disqualify was racially motivated?
We already said we're not talking about the forensic misconduct that's been alleged.
Ông hỏi một vấn đề nữa mà ông Scott McAfee bác bỏ không được hỏi. Bởi vì hỏi rằng bà nói rằng là nói là bà nói vấn đề kỳ thị này nọ thì ông Scott McAfee không cho nói.
An employee? Anyone that worked for Fulton County? I think I said an employee. Okay. So that's the qualification you give an employee? You wouldn't. I think that's the statement that I made. So if you want to quote me accurately. So it's your position because Mr. Wade was not an employee? Or it's your position he wasn't an employee, correct? Mr. Wade is not an employee, and he will tell you that over and over again. Just one moment, Judge. I'm sorry, this statement, just so I make sure I accurately quote you. What you said was you won't sleep with people who work under you. Do you not consider Mr. Wade working under you? I consider Mr. Wade to be an agent.
Nói là bà không có ngủ với người làm việc với bà. Không, tôi không coi ổng là một người làm việc với quyền tôi, mà ổng là một người làm việc cho một cái cơ quan. Toàn là những câu hỏi cá nhân không?
I'm going to try to ask you questions that you
Rồi bây giờ trở lại luật sư của ông Trump, Steve Saddle.
explain, okay?
Yes, sir, my comprehension skills are pretty good, so we should do all right.
We shall soon see. If I heard you correctly, you moved into what I will refer to as the Yurti condo in either March or April of 2021. Is that correct?
Sometime between late February and April, yes, I don't, just so we're clear, yes, but in that time period, you're in the ballpark, we're in the ballpark.
And is that Yurti condo, would you say that it is in Hapeville?
It is in Hatfield, yes, sir.
And you moved in there for safety reasons?
My father, yes, I moved in there, we were concerned, my father was terribly concerned about me continuing to live at the house, and so they were clear, people came to my house at 5 o'clock in the morning, about the police brutality cases, saying I was gonna have a wake-up call. There were security threats due to gang cases, and there were concerns due to the, that was at the very beginning of this, looking into that. And so for all of those reasons and what was happening, my father wanted me out the house, and begrudgingly I left.
Okay, so the answer to the question was a yes for safety reasons, correct?
Those were all of the things that caused the safety concerns. I'm sorry.
I'm not questioning whether they are or are not safety concerns. I just asked that you moved into this condo, the RT condo, for
Right.
safety reasons, right?
Yes,
Okay. At the time that you moved into the condo, be it from February to April of 2021,
yes,
was your father still living in your house?
right, because my father,
That's
yeah,
all I ask you.
but I get to explain the answer, sir.
I don't know if there's an explanation. If I ask you, was your father still living at your house? The answer
Hỏi là cái nhà bà đi ra khỏi bởi vì lý do an ninh, thì bà cha của bà còn ở đó không?
Explain why.
I'm gonna,
So yes, because my father is an older gentleman, he was worried about COVID and he stayed.
Ok, thì bà yes, ông có ở đó bởi vì ông già, ông lớn tuổi. Tôi không hiểu tại sao hỏi như vậy nha, từ từ chúng ta sẽ hiểu.
You'll have a chance to explain yourself. The question was whether your father was not staying there at the time, and you're clarifying that in your answer as well. You can have a brief clarification, but it shouldn't be something that reaches well beyond the question. All right, Mr. Sadal, you can re-ask the question. We'll see where it takes us.
okay, thank you. Was your father still living in your house at the time you moved to what I would refer to as a Yurti condo?
Yes, sir, he was due to his concerns related to COVID.
The safety concern was that there was potential danger at your house. Is that correct?
Yes, my address had been exposed, so yes, there was concerns about.
Bây giờ nói về vấn đề an ninh.
So anyone staying at your house in the time period after you went to the Yurti condo was still in danger, correct?
Yeah, well, no, he did.
I think you have to, it's your attorney, Ms. Wells. Sorry, Mr. Bott, your objection is speculation.
Yes.
To the question of
Ông này hỏi tiếp tục về rất là nhiều về tại sao bà đang ở cái nhà đó, bà lại không ở nữa mà ra đi ở với cái người bạn của bà. Bà nói bởi vì lúc đó bà bị hăm dọa, bà bị rất nhiều sự đe dọa, cho nên cha bà khuyên bà là nên ra đi. Nhưng mà ông phải ở lại bởi vì Covid-19. Rồi ông này ông hỏi thêm những cái chi tiết là còn người nào khác nữa không?
Yes, I was very concerned about my father still living at the house. However, if you have dealt with an older gentleman,
tôi rất là lo ngại ba tôi ở đó một mình, nhưng mà ông phải hiểu rằng ba tôi rất là lớn tuổi.
he did not want to leave the house.
Ông ta không muốn rời căn nhà.
About COVID, but that became I don't want to say I was not.
Ý ở đây nói bà này đi ra ngoài để mà được tự do với ông Nathan Nguoi đó quý vị.
During that period that you left to go to the Yurti condo, did any of your children stay at your house?
So I don't think that they were there at that point. Certainly my baby wasn't there.
I'm talking about this entire period.
Khi mà bà đi như vậy thì con bà đó có ở cái nhà đó không? Có đến cái nhà đó ở không?
Until January of 2022, correct?
January
Okay, so I'm
2022.
asking you in that period, which would be February to April of 2021 until January of 22, did any of your children stay at your house?
And you don't have to yell at me. I'm able to understand. So I would ask you to not yell at me. That being said, I don't actually expressly remember, but I can tell you, since I have left my home,
À,
there
tôi
was a
không
time
biết
my
chuyện đó
oldest
được.
daughter came in. But I can't tell you with certainty the time window that you said, if they did or not. And so I don't want to speculate to that, but there was some time that my oldest daughter came back. Whether it was that period or after I left the
À,
newly residence, I'm not
tôi
sure.
không có biết chắc là con tôi có ở đó hay không,
If I continue
nhưng
to
mà
go into
có
more
thể.
detail on this, you're not going to be able to give me an answer of whether or not, in fact, any of your children were still at the house or stayed at your house during that time period, correct?
What I can give you clarity of, so that we are clear, is from the time I moved out in February-ish of 2021,
Ý-
after I left there was a time period that my oldest daughter came back. But if you're asking me, was it in that window or after, I just don't have a recollection of that, because, you know, your kids come and they go. And so I don't remember the specific time period, and I apologize for that.
Did your children ever stay with you at the Yurti condo?
Like maybe a night, like for a girls' night or something, but.
Viet condo là cái condo của người bạn của bạn, người mà sáng nay ra
Including Miss Yurti.
để mà khai rằng bà đã tâm sự với bà kia là bà có vấn đề tình cảm với ông Nathan Nguoi từ trước năm trước khi mà ông làm việc cho bà.
Stayed with you at the condo.
Bây giờ ông này đang tìm hiểu là bà đang ở với cha của bà, nhưng mà bà đi ra ngoài có phải để tìm sự tự do hay không? Để mà đi tìm sự tự do, để mà có liên lạc với ông Nathan Nguoi, đó là cố gắng gài bà vào trong đó. Thì bà nói không, ba tôi khuyên tôi ra đi bởi vì lý do an ninh cho cuộc sống của tôi, bởi vì cái địa chỉ của tôi, cái tên tuổi của tôi mọi người đều biết hết. Nhưng mà ba bà phải ở lại bởi vì ông đã lớn tuổi rồi và Covid-19 cho nên không dám đi đâu hết. Thì ông này mới hỏi là trong thời gian đó con bà có ở không, thì bà đó có tới lui. Thì tôi không biết là lúc nào, thì tôi không biết. Cũng trở lại, cũng vẫn còn đang nói về vấn đề bà đi ra đi vô đó quý vị.
He came to visit. I can remember us going, I think the restaurant's lickety split. I can remember him picking me up, going to lickety split and ordering some food and coming and sitting at my table and eating. So I remember times that he visited me at that condo, yes.
Okay, could you give us an approximation of how many times Mr. Wade visited you at the condo between the time you moved in and prior to November 1 of 2020?
I don't think often, but I don't want to speculate.
Can we say more than 5, more than 10?
I'm gonna tell you the problem I'm having here. Let's say more than 10, but I'm not sure that that's even accurate. He certainly has come and picked me up, gone and grabbed some food to eat.
Trong thời gian ở cái condo đó thì ông Nathan Nguoi có đến viếng thăm không? Bà nói khoảng 10 lần.
Giving me your current and best recollection is all I'm asking for.
That's all I can give you, sir.
How many times did any of the prosecution team, how many times did Anna Cross come to that condo between the time you moved in and November 1st of 2021?
I don't think Anna's ever been to that condo.
What about any other prosecutor that's involved in the prosecution of this case?
I don't think any of them have.
Just Mr. Wade?
That's correct, sir.
Tức là ý muốn buộc tội là ông Nguoi đến viếng thăm bà ở khi mà bà mua ra như vậy. Thì là lúc đó là hai người đang có tình cảm đó, cố gắng kép buộc cái điều này nha quý vị.
I have a lot of guilt about this time period in my life. Let me tell you why. But yes, it was a lonely time.
Okay.
I was very appreciative to the citizens for giving me this responsibility and this duty. But what I very, very quickly learned is that this is a very isolating job, and 2021 was a lonely time. I turned 50 in 2021. That's probably one of the worst birthdays I've ever had. I spent it alone. So I have a clear recollection of 2021 being loan.
Did Mr. Wade ever visit you at the condo, the time period I'm talking about, prior to November of 2021, when Ms. Yerte was at the condo?
So Ms. Yurdy and me, we didn't share the condo at the same time,
So the answer would be no.
but we never stayed there together, so it's an
No, I'm saying-
impossibility.
It's an impossibility.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now, Ms. Yurdy, because we need to get clarification on this. Ms. Yurdy stayed in that place. There may have been a time that me and Mr. Wade visited, like went and saw Ms. Yurdy, but me and Ms. Yurdy never lived there together, just so we're clear.
well, maybe that was clear, but I'm gonna have to try again.
Okay,
Was Ms. Yerte still living in the condo when you moved in?
not a day.
Okay, so when
That
I'm
was another
talking,
misrepresentation in this. We never lived together. I never lived with Ms.
Bà hai người này ở chung một khu chứ không phải cùng một căn nhà
after
nha
you
quý
moved
vị.
in to the condo, Ms. Yerte she was out of the condo, right?
She got a house.
That's all I'm
Dạ,
asking.
thành ra đây là một cái điểm quan trọng nè.
We never stay, Miss Yurty and I never stay a day together in the
Không có
condo.
ở chung với
All
nhau.
of her stuff was out of the condo and all my stuff, some of my
Không,
stuff.
hai người này không bao giờ ở chung với nhau. Và bà này hồi sáng đó là nói đó là bà không có nghi ngờ gì là bà này với ông Nathan Way đã có vấn đề tình cảm năm 2019.
Yeah,
Đang cố gắng buộc tội hai người này là nói láo.
Correct?
that would be correct, yes.
She wouldn't be at the condo, correct?
No, she would not have
It
been.
would be you and Mr. Wade alone at the condo, correct?
Yes,
That is, there weren't any other witnesses to Mr. Wade and you at the condo, correct?
yes.
No security, none of your security detail.
Bà Way, ông hỏi rằng bà vậy thì khi mà ông Way tới gặp bà đó thì bà với ông với bà một mình, bà nói đúng, điều đó đúng.
Who in the prosecution team prior to, I guess, the motion being filed by, defendant-
Cái này hơi yếu nha quý vị.
Who in the
Để coi.
prosecution team knew of your personal relationship, and now I'm talking romantic, with Mr. Wade?
So, sir, I am extremely private.
All I ask
No,
is
no,
who
no.
knew? It's not, the answer is no one knew, that's fine.
No.
I ask you who knew.
Answer,
me just tell
answer it
you.
and then explain this with us.
I am very private. When I supervised Mr. Body and Mr. McAfee, they didn't know who I was dating, but I can assure you I was dating somebody. So that I kept something private, that's my private life.
Lại hỏi
It's
là
not
cái
a
câu nữa
mystery to anyone.
là ai có biết cái sự liên hệ của bà Way với ông giữa bà với ông Way không? Bà nói chuyện đó chuyện riêng của tôi. Thì ông này ông muốn ngừng lại, ông muốn hỏi bà nói yes or no, thì ông McAfee cho phép bà giải thích.
Is there anyone else who knew about it? And then you can explain.
I don't know. I don't think so. I certainly didn't.
Tôi không, bà nói tôi không có biết ai biết hay không, nhưng mà tôi thì tôi không có nói cho ai biết hết cả.
You didn't inform anyone on the prosecution team that the individual that you had chosen to lead the prosecution team had a personal relationship with you.
So
Is that correct?
That's inaccurate. Your question is inaccurate.
What?
Because you stated that the person I chose, we had a personal relationship. So we had a friendship. We have all these distinguishing factors. Remember, when I chose him in November of 21, first of all, let's get this straight. Mr. Wade was not actually my first choice. That's no insult to him.
Yeah,
No,
I
it is you because of the way you phrased the question. You said, when I chose him, I didn't inform people of a personal relationship. We have defined personal as romantic. It is an inaccurate way to state the question.
Then I will
as-
certainly restate it so it is very accurate.
Okay, and please do not yell at me.
You hired Mr. Wade for the first time on November 1st of 2021, correct?
November of 2021, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Your testimony is, whether one accepts it or not, your testimony is that at the time you hired Mr. Wade, there had never been a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade before.
Vẫn đang muốn cáo buộc là bà có tình cảm với ông trước năm 2019.
We're talking about the sex, so let's just don't.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm saying romantic relationship doesn't necessarily have to be just sex.
Well,
It can
I
be
don't-
dating, it can be holding hands, it can be any of those things that one might call romantic. I'm asking you whether or not prior to November 1st of 2021, there was a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade. That's very simple. It's either a yes or a no.
I don't consider my relationship with him to be romantic before that. I'm not a hand holder, so no.
Okay, that's fine. Now, let's move beyond November 1st of 2020,
Yeah.
2021, excuse me.
Bà xác nhận lại là trước khi mà bà thuê ổng không có vấn đề tình cảm.
Romantic relationship with Mr. Wade until early in 2022, whether it be January or February or March, early in 2022, correct?
I would say sometime between February and April. Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'm asking you about that time period when it became romantic,
Yes.
okay?
Thank you.
Okay. You didn't see the need, if I understand, to tell any of the people on the prosecution team when you had established a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade, that the lead prosecutor, that is the people, the man.
Ý nói là tại sao bà có relationship mà bà có nói cho ai biết không?
Or having a romantic relationship with you, correct?
I'm gonna object to relevant point, Your Honor. It's not
So now
relevant.
relevance?
Just to prove, we're attempting to show that there is an issue on the credibility about the relationship. The failure to have informed anyone on her team that she was having a romantic relationship with the lead prosecutor, I suggest gives rise to that inference. That's the relevance.
The inference
that they were concealing this because it was not as it's been characterized to the court, and that in fact it started earlier than what they say.
all right, overruled, Mr. Sadao.
I just want to make sure that we're clear. From at least 2020, me and Mr. Wade were friends. At least that time period.
Bà xác nhận lại từ 2020 đến 2021 họ vẫn là bạn.
Prior to November of 2021. In November of 2021,
Sau đó ổng thuê rồi thì vấn đề tức là cũng lặp lại những gì hồi sáng nay thôi quý vị.
Because I don't know what date and time. I'm saying sometime between February and April of 2022, and very early April of 2022, because I know that trip that I discussed with you was like the first week of 2022, that the relationship had become romantic. I hope that answered your question, but I can't have it where, you know, we're saying something differently.
Fine, so you've established the timeline as you put it. The question originally was, at that time, did you tell any other prosecutors?
I never tell people at work who I'm dating.
All right, Mr. Sadao.
Okay. Did you take any trips to DC with Mr. Wade?
Never.
Did you take, okay, so do you have no, what I would call personal trips or business trips to DC with Mr. Wade?
I never went to DC with Mr. Wade, personal business.
Có hỏi bà có đến Washington DC không? Bà nói tôi không bao giờ đến, tôi chưa bao giờ đến.
So as I understand it, to be clear, any trips that you would have taken to see DC
That was a pretty clear answer.
Huh?
That was a pretty clear answer.
No.
She just said no.
Bà nói no rồi còn hỏi tiếp nữa.
So you have a variation.
Ông Scott McAfee, ông không muốn mất thì giờ quý vị.
I'll ask it and we'll see. Did you take trips to DC that were non-business during the time period that this case or this matter was under investigation?
I'm gonna object as to relevance relates to the matter that we're here before Your Honor.
Well, again, the question already asked is take personal or business trips. She said,
But that was with Mr.
Personal or
Wade.
business?
That was with Mr. Wade. This I asked her alone whether she took.
okay.
What's the
And
relevance?
what would be the relevance of that?
Trying to understand whether or not we have the ability to show a personal trip in which Mr. Wade is there at the same time. I understand her answer, okay? I understand her answer, but we have documents, we have records that.
Your Honor, I was gonna object to this document that they.
Well, this could be something that's maybe not part of the record yet, but I think there have been other things discussed in this case, and they have evidence that Mr. Wade may have been in DC at the same time. If you want to ask about that exact specific date, Mr. Sadao, you can do that.
I would support that.
Hỏi bà có đến Washington DC với ông Nguoi hay không?
Sure. And so that's going to limit its merit and impact on credibility, so Mr. State, I'll ask the question.
So,
Whether, I understand your testimony is you never took a trip to DC with Mr. Wade,
that's correct,
personal or business.
that's correct.
Were you ever in DC at the same time as Mr. Wade?
I was not.
Personal or business?
No, me and Mr. Wade have not been to DC at the same time. However, since Mr. Wade has been on this case, he's been to DC. Since Mr. Wade has been on to this case, I've been to DC. What has not happened is we have not been in the District of Columbia at the same time. Now, the only thing I'm not sure about with what you asked me is if I've been to DC personally, because I got a lot of personal friends in that area. But I know that I have been to DC. I did an interview at Howard University. I went to DC for that.
Bà nói bà có mặt ở DC nhưng mà không bao giờ đi chung với ông Nguoi hay gặp ông Nguoi ở Washington DC.
My next question is based on her opening the door, and therefore I'll just ask it and Your Honor can decide whether or not it's appropriate. When you went to DC, did you go to the White House?
I did not go to the White House.
No, well,
Thì hỏi vô lý thì bà có đi tới tòa Bạch Ốc hay không?
You indicated
Tôi không hiểu nha.
recollection was that your relationship with Mr. Wade, the romantic relationship, ended, you left it in August of 2023. That sound right?
That's the hard conversation. That's not the,
we've covered this. Next question.
And you characterized it as a tough conversation, correct?
yes,
I'm not going to get into the conversation per
we
se.
should.
Well, if he doesn't want to, we won't go there. So, Mr. State, next question.
You know, it's kinda
Đừng có
hard
hỏi
to
những
know
chuyện đời
that's
tư nha
all
quý vị.
All I'm going to say is was it pre-indictment in this case?
So,
We know the timeline that the indictment was delivered.
okay,
Well,
but,
actually,
and so that
I'll
we're
give you
clear,
that.
the physical relationship ended pre-indictment.
And is that when you were talking about the
Wow.
conversation?
But
Họ đã chấm dứt cái tình cảm với nhau trước khi mà họ kết tội ông Trump.
physical relationship, so I'm sure
Họ buộc tội ông Trump, xin lỗi. Trước khi mà họ buộc tội ông Trump thì cái tình cảm của họ đã chấm dứt rồi.
Contact ended then. Just in my mind, being a woman, it's over when you have that like hard conversation. I just think women and men think differently.
And I think the answer, Mr. State, to your question was she's not sure whether it was before or after the indictment.
I'm not sure that was her answer, but let's see if I can get specific.
That is what I said. That's what I said.
I'll let you. Next question, Mr. State. If you need to
Want to say
clarify.
one more? The romantic relationship ended before the indictment was returned, yes or no?
To a man, yes.
Well, to a man, yes. To you, no?
She's explained this, Mr. State. She's explained this.
And did the forthcoming indictment have anything to do with that? Or was it just a coincidence?
Let's go on and have the conversation.
I'm just asking you whether or not it was a
Had
coincidence.
absolutely nothing to do with this. It's interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion.
Bà đang tâm sự là tại sao bà với ông Nguoi
in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Hay quá quý vị.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No,
Sure.
but I'm sure we'll talk about it further.
Tức là sở dĩ mà hai người này đó mà
My next question.
bỏ nhau đó thì vì ông Nguoi muốn bả làm cho một cái sandwich. Lâu lâu làm cho ông cái sandwich nhưng mà bả không làm. Và đó là lý do tại sao bả trả tiền lại cho ổng. Bả không có muốn lệ thuộc vào ai hết.
Then we'll move on.
That's correct. Thank you. When you gave what I've referred to as the Martin Luther King weekend church speech, you know what I'm referring to?
A great honor of mine. That's a historic African-American church. Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you have handwritten notes with you that you were reading from during the speech.
And on second thought, Mr. Sadov, because you might have a number of questions about this, why don't we just bullet point what you would want to cover on this, reserved for the record?
Lại hỏi về cái buổi nói chuyện của bà nhà thờ thì ông McAfee, ông stop.
Where the forensic misconduct isn't a
So
subject
do
of the
I
evidentiary
not get
hearing.
an answer for that?
That's right.
Did you read your speech?
Well, no, Mr. Sadov, for everything related.
Không cho phép hỏi, mà có liên hệ gì đến bà này là người mà không có hạnh kiểm tốt, không có làm việc xấu đâu. Chứ tự nhiên hỏi bà lên trên nhà thờ, bà cầm cái nốt bà đọc thì ông Scott McAfee ông không cho hỏi quý vị.
I'm going to ask her about, did she prepare the speech? Did she have notes on the speech? Did she read the speech? When did she do this? When did she write the speech? Who was she referring to when she was talking about others? Who was she referring to when she said they? Who she was referring to when she spoke in terms of their, that is, their,
I would love to answer those questions.
Well, Ms. Willis, you can certainly do that in some other format, but for today, that's what we decided we're not going to cover.
who was she talking about that was playing?
Không cho phép hỏi về vấn đề đó, tại bà lúc đó bà nói là mấy người này kỳ thị bà. Ông McAfee ông nói đây không phải là phiên tòa nói về vấn đề này.
Romantic relationship with the, I'll do respect the way it was characterized, the black man that she was referring to, and what the black man she referring to was that Mr. Wade.
Okay.
That's that area of inquiry.
Noted for the record, Mr. Sadov. Next topic.
Okay.
Không có cho phép hỏi và không có cho phép đưa vào trong cái đề tài
I
này.
realize that you testified that you have no records that with regard to cash payments,
Yes.
correct? Would your bank records reflect that you withdrew cash from your bank accounts during the time period?
Là bây giờ trở lại là vấn đề tiền bạc.
2021.
Bà có chứng minh được là bà lấy tiền mặt ra từ trong nhà băng hay không?
I'm just asking whether they would reflect that you withdrew cash.
Có số tiền nào đó mà bà lấy ra mà nó tương xứng với số tiền bà trả cho ông Nguoi hay không?
Just
But yeah,
that you did.
of course, I withdrew money throughout that time period, throughout my life. I withdrawn money from the bank. Yes, of course.
Talking about cash, that is, that you go to a
Cash,
bank
right.
or you go to an ATM
Cash.
and you take cash out.
Either that way, or you go to Publix and you overpay, or you go to another store and you overpay. So yes, both through that, yes, of course they would reflect that at times.
Okay, and so those records, if we had them, would show that, correct?
That throughout the course of my life, I
No,
took
no,
out money.
I was very specific. I said
Yes, during the course of
2020.
that time period, I would have taken money out. Yes,
So, do you have a problem with,
I absolutely, yes.
you don't want the bank records to be made available for the court and the court
I'm
alone?
gonna object this to the relevance and this is
Bà có những cái giấy tờ bà rút tiền ra để mà trả cho ông Nathan Nguoi không? Bà có thể cho tòa chỉ cho tòa án thấy hay không? Thì ông
Sustained on relevance.
luật
Mr. Sadov, that's something you want to follow up privately?
rồi ông
Last, you had
McAfee không cho nói.
with Mr. Wade in the year 2020, correct?
Không cho
I
hỏi.
had some contact with Mr. Wade.
Would you explain when you say some contact? Please tell us, talking about 2020.
I had some contact with Mr. Wade in 2020. One of the reasons your allegations are so preposterous, or Ms. Merchants that you have joined, is
Ma'am,
No, no,
I
no,
didn't
no.
ask you about the allegations, I asked you about your contact. All I asked.
Bây giờ hết tiền rồi, bây giờ lại qua vấn đề liên hệ.
I'm interested in,
Thời
did you
gian.
have contacts with Mr. Wade in 2020, and your answer so far has been yes, correct?
very limited contact because
Bà có liên lạc với ông trước năm 2020 thì câu hỏi này đã hỏi với ông Nguoi hồi nãy đó quý vị. Thì bà nói có nhưng mà rất ít.
Appreciate the
I'm not going to
characterization.
emasculate a black man, but I'm just telling you
I'm
that
sorry, what?
I'm not going to emasculate a black man. Did you understand that?
All
Well, I
right,
don't
let's
think we
get
should
back on
discuss
track.
further.
Mr. Sadov, next question.
Trying to, Your Honor. Would you tell us?
Bà tấn công ông này nha quý vị.
2020 that you had contact with Mr. Wade.
I'm sorry, I thought I had answered that. Yes, sir. There were times in 2020 I had contact.
Cứ hỏi lại là bà có gặp, có liên lạc với ông không? Có, tôi đã nói rồi là có.
And I did not have much contact, but I certainly had contact with him in 2020.
Did you
It
go
wasn't-
out to eat with him?
Maybe, probably.
Did you visit him in any location, his office, or did he visit you in your office?
Tức là tạo ra cái sự nghi ngờ là người này có liên hệ bằng cách hỏi có đi ăn hay không, có đến văn phòng hay không.
I'm sure, that's a very good question. I'm sure he came to 750 in 2020.
750 is,
Was my office.
okay.
Not often, but maybe once or twice. Maybe I went to his office once or twice, but
Tôi có đến văn phòng ông 1-2 lần thôi, và ông có đến văn phòng tôi 1-2 lần.
In what?
Trước năm 2000, nhà về trước khi mà thuê.
for pizza or maybe he would have come for lunch. I'm sure we went by each other's office though, but not often, not a lot.
Không có đến nhiều, cái quan trọng là không đến nhiều. Cái tình yêu thì phải đến nhiều, đúng không quý vị?
I'm not going into that. But when you were going out with him to restaurants, or when he would come to your office, right? Those were not sterile environments, were they?
Oh, very sterile because it
The
was
restaurants were sterile environments?
a lot of times we wouldn't eat there. We would pick up something and go in, but they were. You
I'm listening to you. You pick up and take it to where?
maybe eat at our office, but it did not happen much. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. And my office in 2020, nobody was coming in. I was stir crazy, so I would still go into my office. You remember when I started this, I said, I am not even sure if we came to each other's offices, but I am trying to be over.
Đúng vậy đó anh chị
I think I
Patrick
can
Trần.
recall him at 750 a couple of times. I just think I can recall him at 750 once, but let's say twice. I have seen his office. I remember all the awards in the lobby, but I'm not sure in 2020 I went. I'm not even sure I went in 2020 at all. I just want to tell you yes, because I'm not sure. But I have a distinct recollection of him at 750. I actually don't have a distinct recollection of me at his office in 2020. But maybe I went to his office in 2020. Maybe.
Did you have ongoing phone conversations during 2020 with Mr. Wade?
Oh yeah, I talked to. Yes, absolutely.
Có điện thoại hay không? Có.
No question. I talked to him.
Năm 2020.
I understood, and this is, maybe I was confused. The Belize trip was for
His 50th birthday.
his 50th birthday, and that was in
March.
Trở lại với vấn đề đi du lịch với nhau trong ngày sinh nhật của ông ta.
The dates of the trip. I think we were there about 6 days. We stayed at 2 different locations.
and you paid for it.
100%. He said.
Nói y chang như ông Nguoi nói, tôi trả 100% số tiền đó.
I paid for massages. I paid for everything.
And would those payments be reflected on your credit card?
Cabs.
You paid them in cash?
Cabs. I was telling you all the different things.
And I'm asking you whether or not those payments would be reflected on credit card bills of yours.
So there was about $500 that I think is reflected on a debit card. What my recollection is, I took about $4 in cash with me to that.
400 or 4,000?
4,000. But I remember I handed him $2,500, and then the rest was just the money we spent.
Bà nói bà đem tới tiền mặt.
This guy who was a taxi driver, he would drive us.
Bà đem $4,000 tiền mặt trả cho ông 2,500, và còn tiền còn lại thì để xài.
And you had, to be clear, to end this up, the 4,000 that you just told us.
But I didn't give it all to him. Remember, I only gave the $2,500 to him.
I didn't ask you that. I was going to ask you that 4,000 is part of your, my words, cash hoard that you had collected over time.
Cash what?
Hoard, H-O-R-D-E.
Oh, I thought you said something different, sir.
No, I'm afraid I wouldn't say that. Any circumstances to you or in.
All right, back on track.
The hoard, cash hoard debt.
I would not classify it in that way, but I have money at my house. Yes, sir.
And the money, when you had money at your house,
But I'm speaking too loosely. I had money wherever I was staying. So I was not referring to my house in 750. I'm saying I had money wherever I was laying my head.
Bà lúc nào cũng có tiền mặt. Không phải chỉ nhà bà, nhưng mà lúc bà đi ra ngoài đường, bà cũng có tiền mặt.
During the time period we've always discussed, that's where you would keep your cash.
When I stay there, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right,
Anh nói hay đó, anh
We've already
Patrick
fixed counsel
rằng
possible for breaking for today. Mr. Stockton?
rồi ông kia xong.
I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Madam DA, you described these various trips, and Mr. Sadow asked you about going to Washington. Did you and Mr. Wade go to New York?
Bây giờ đổi qua New York, thì giờ Washington, thì giờ ông này lên hỏi là bà có đi New York không?
I think it was 2 or 3 times. I went to do a domestic violence thing there for sure, and I was honored, and I went to the Apollo there. Those are the only 2 trips that come to mind. I went. He was not with me.
You also said that he was a world traveler and had been on many of the continents.
I've been to 6.
Have you been on any of those continents with him, besides this one?
Where's Belize? What continent is it? I'm not being funny, I don't know.
Let's say, with the
I've been
exception
to
of,
Belize with him. I've been to the Bahamas with him. I've been with Aruba with him. Don't embarrass me. I'm not sure what continents those are on. Whatever continents those are, that's where I've been. I'm sure if I gave it some thought, I would tell you, but whatever continents those are, that I've been to those locations, sir.
but not Australia or any other continents.
I don't even want to go to Australia. I do know he took a trip.
Hỏi bà có đi
I had no idea, you know. I don't know anything about that.
Australia, Úc Đại Lợi và ông con bà đó, bà chưa bao giờ đi tới đó hết.
Wade began working with your office.
Yes,
He had 2 other gentlemen that worked in his firm with him. Is that correct?
yes, Terrence Bradley worked for him, and Chris Campbell worked not for him, they worked with each other.
Did you understand what their partnership arrangement was?
No,
Did he ever make you aware of how fees were divided or anything?
no.
Now, since you have been district attorney, the 2 gentlemen that worked with Mr. Wade and his firm, they also had contracts with your office. Is that correct?
I probably had 2. I don't,
Well, I don't know if we've covered this in Ms. Willis, but I still don't know what the relevance would be of her testifying to this.
but I've had about 10 people. I'm sorry, do you want me to answer
Let's
or
figure
no?
this out.
Judge, respect.
Ông Scott McCarthy không cho hỏi cái câu hỏi.
He had an interest in those contracts. Sure.
And then, but how has that been imputed to Ms. Willis?
Không cho hỏi câu hỏi này bởi vì câu hỏi này không liên hệ với vấn đề. Đây là đang cái bụi rần này là nói về cái hành kiểm của bà nha quý vị. Cái hành kiểm của bà, hành kiểm ở đây có nghĩa là cuộc tình cảm này xảy ra lúc nào, tiền bạc như thế nào, đơn giản vậy thôi.
See where it takes us. Go ahead.
The 2 gentlemen that were in Mr. Wade's office, did they have what I think's been referred to as a taint contract?
So let me be clear, and I may get the names wrong. When I first became DA, the office was not properly staffed. And so I'm surprised any lawyer would take it, but I did a contract for like $60 an hour to help us out with first appearance. That lasted a few months, okay? So I can't remember if Bradley or Campbell had that. I'm sure we can have records and I can tell you which one, but I just can't remember now. I liked their experience. Bradley had been a probation officer and a defense attorney. Campbell had been a police officer and
Tức là bây giờ đang nói về vấn đề thuê những cái người kia, thuê những người mà làm việc chung với ông Nathan Wade đó, là ông Bradley đó.
Enough lawyers for that, I let them go. Then we had what's called a filter contract, but it was not filter for this particular case. I do have a lawyer who does the filter for this election interference case. When we're talking about filter, the contract they had that neither one of them has any longer, I now have another lawyer that does that for me. It was only for police brutality cases. It's for what I call so when I first got to be the DA, I had, the whole unit was called anti-corruption. It dealt with both elections and police brutality cases. I actually took a trip to Houston and visited the district attorney in Houston. They divided their work up, and I thought the way she was doing it was better than me. And so I made a civil rights unit. And so they did what we would classify as civil rights cases. those are.
Bà nói trong thời gian bà làm việc á, thì cái Fulton County này á, nhiều cái vấn đề tổ chức không có tốt đẹp. Cho nên bà đến Houston và bà học hỏi được một cái cách tổ chức hay hơn, và bà thường sử dụng luật sư khi bà cần, và khi mà hết rồi á, thì bà không sử dụng luật sư ở ngoài. Ông Nathan Nguoi là một người luật sư ở ngoài, không có nằm trong cái văn phòng của bà.
Could you tell me help me understand what the purpose of the filter is?
Yes, sir. So what a filter is police officers make statements in the line of duty, and you are not allowed as the prosecutor to know what those statements are if they're done in the furtherance of their employment. And in fact, if you know what those statements are, you're basically disqualified from the case. You can't have it.
Bà nói một những cái sự cải cách của bà là vấn đề cảnh sát như
they pick the case up directly from the GBI because that's where those cases go to. And then what they are to do is to go through the entire file. So the body cam, which is important because
bà cải cách cái bộ cái việc làm của những người cảnh sát khi mà bà lên nhậm chức.
And so what your filter lawyer does is they go through it, they either redact it out electronically or they cross it out, and then once it is crossed out, then they provide it to my team, and then we're able to look at it. That was not being done appropriately when I became district attorney. I thought that it had only been, so Mr. Howard had some Chinese wall thing that I didn't think worked at all, where allegedly those cases were properly redacted. That ended up being a joke. And so the 5 cases really turned into, I'm not going to say all 101, but a vast majority. That is the work that Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell did for me. They did a really good job. All of those cases that we originally came with, they're done. Those cases they're not just done for Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell, they're done through my office. But obviously life is not stagnant. There have been new police cases. I do have a lawyer that is doing that work now. That doesn't work for me. That's same kind of deal. I have another lawyer that does filtering for this case.
Tức là bà đang biện minh cho tại sao mà bà thuê những người luật sư ở ngoài để phụ bà làm những cái công việc. Bởi vì nó liên hệ tới ông Bradley, là partner của ông Wade.
I'm just not. Ultimately, the answer to your question is yes, but I'm not sure that they did it at the same time. The first appearance contract was either $60 or $90. I don't know really how I convinced them to be able to take that, but I think because it was for such a short amount of time. And then I think I pay my filter lawyers, which I still don't know how I get away with, about $150 an hour. And I want you to understand, the AG pays special prosecutors $1,000 an hour. So I'm a tough negotiator. Paul was paying people up to $375 an hour.
Bà không bao giờ ở trong này thường đó là nhiều khi phải trả tới cả $1,000, nhưng người làm việc cho bà không bao giờ mà bà trả hơn $375 một giờ. Và cũng không có bao giờ làm quá nhiều giờ được.
And the 2 other gentlemen that were in his firm were splitting fees in equal thirds. Would you agree that he would benefit from the tank contract and also from the other first appearance contract?
I would agree he would make money. Yeah, so to make money is a benefit.
Just a thought, guy.
Mr. Durham, you're still with us on Zoom.
No question, Your Honor.
Mr. McDougald.
You have a couple, Your Honor, but it's a little awkward from back here.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and make your way up.
Thêm một người nữa.
Good afternoon, Ms. Willis. How you doing?
I'm very well. How are you, Mr. McDougall? I think this is our first in-person meeting, correct?
Second.
Second? Well, I apologize for not remembering you more clear.
That's quite all right. I'm referring now to exhibit number 21,
Yes, sir.
which was your financial disclosure form for
Ông McCarthy bây giờ ông rất là khó, không có kiên nhẫn nữa nha quý vị. Ông thấy ông mệt quá đó. Ông cứ nói là next topic, next topic.
any gifts or favors from a single prohibited source in the
Không có chi
aggregate
anh
amount
chị
of $100 or
Tuân
more. Do
Vũ.
you see that?
I don't, but I believe you.
It would be on page 2 in the middle, paragraph number 3.
Yes.
And what is your understanding of a prohibited source for purposes of this form?
I believe there's some classification of somebody you like don't have a personal relationship with that gives you $100.
All right, if you look under there
Sorry.
at subparagraph 2, Romanet 2, it defines it as someone that you know or should know is seeking to do or is doing business with the county, correct?
Yes, but yes, yes,
That includes Mr. Wade as of the date you filled out this form, correct?
yes, but he never gave me a gift of $100 or more. The only thing that I would say, maybe when I
lại
was
nói
offered
rằng
to
bà
get
có nhận được tiền
if we went to dinner
của
and
người
my
nào
meal was
khác không?
$100, but I don't think I've ever
Có ông
eaten
Quay không?
$100 worth of food at a restaurant, because I would not pay him back if we went to lunch or went to dinner. But trips, I paid him back for. You know, I never thought about the money until y'all brought it up, and I would be less than honest. It says I was giving him the money back because I was the district attorney. I didn't take gifts from him. For a lot of personal
Quý vị
reasons.
biết đây là những người luật sư của ông Trump nè, rồi luật sư của Jeffrey Clark. Chắc nhiều người lên hỏi nhau, họ tụ lại đó quý vị.
Any gifts from Mr. Wade on exhibit number 21.
Cho nên nhiều khi á, họ
aggregate amount on a net basis was less than $100 in the year 2022. Is that correct?
I did not accept a gift of him of more than $100 in 2022. The one exception to that, because I want us to be clear.
có nhận được cái số tiền tiền quà tặng nào của ông quay trên 100 đồng hay không?
Eating a meal, you know, because we went out multiple times, that probably went to the level of more than $100. But if we're doing tit for tat like that, I probably paid for as many meals as he paid for, and so.
Đó, thì ông trả cho tôi trên 100 đồng, tức là gift ở đây có nghĩa là trả tiền đó, thì tôi cũng trả lại cho ông thôi. Chết. Ông McAfee nổi giận rồi quý vị. Cho ổng ngồi xuống luôn, đuổi ông này xuống. Ông này hỏi gì mà có nhận được tiền trên 100 đồng không mà hỏi tới hỏi lui, ông cho đi xuống luôn. Ông McAfee á, giờ ông nổi nóng rồi đó quý vị. Hỏi vớ vẩn đó. Đối với đừng nghĩ luật sư mà không hỏi vớ vẩn nha. Hỏi câu có nhận được trên 100 đồng không, bà trả lời rồi. Hỏi tiếp. Rồi, ông này hồi nãy là hỏi ông này tên Nguoi đó, bây giờ tới phiên đây là luật sư của Trump đấy nha quý vị. Đem cuốn sách
Well, I guess you're tendering it. Is it with the position of the state?
Bây giờ đem cuốn sách ra để đặt câu hỏi gì không biết. Cuốn sách này nếu mà tôi nhớ không lầm á, là ông Raffensperger là người viết cuốn sách này hay là ai không phải. Để tôi coi lại nha quý vị. Coi là ai là người viết cuốn sách này. Author cuốn sách này. Giờ đưa cuốn sách này ra là cuốn sách này á. Đúng rồi, ông cuốn sách này được viết và đưa cuốn sách này ra để chắc là chứng minh là bà nhận tiền từ những người viết cuốn sách này.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, you were asked a little bit about this book before, correct?
I think Mrs. Mrs. Merchant
Ms. Merchant did.
asked me some questions, yes.
And you gave about 6 interviews to the authors of this book in a sit down?
À,
You didn't. Was it,
She answered how many interviews she gave in her opinion.
how many, in your opinion, you believe you gave, and how long did they last?
2 to 3.
bây giờ ý nè, tôi biết rồi, bởi vì ý đưa cuốn sách này ra, bà được phỏng vấn như vậy là bà được tiền, tức ý nói bà này á, cái gì cũng được tiền hết. Chúng ta nghe thử tới đâu nha.
In total, yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Anywhere between, definitely not more than 2-ish hours.
Okay, but you also were telling, when they were, the title of the book, of course, is A Hard-Charging Georgia Prosecutor, a Rogue President, and the Plot to Steal American Election. You've
I
seen that.
had, I,
Why is the title of the book relevant, sir?
and I had no,
And then I'm gonna ask her whether or not that was the theme that they gave her when they talked with her.
What the thing gave her, what do you mean by that?
Or because-
Ông Scott McAfee không cho đặt câu hỏi là hỏi về cái vụ lật ngược của bầu cử. McAfee cũng không cho hỏi luôn.
But they want her to give her version of what her life story is. This is almost a life story of her. So that's why it's relevant. But
Ông nói đây là cái cuộc đời của bà, cho nên nó có liên hệ tới cái vấn đề đạo đức của bà.
Forensic misconduct that has been alleged and maybe some of the motives at play.
Rồi ông McAfee nói không, cái này không có liên hệ gì đến cái cuộc phỏng vấn của bà, đến cái đạo đức của bà, cái conduct của bà, cái hành động của bà đối với ông Nathan Wade.
Also relevant to personal interest in terms of the finances. Let me.
I didn't make 10 cents off that book.
Pardon me?
I didn't make 10 cents off that book. I
Didn't
didn't,
ask whether you made any money.
okay, I just,
Didn't ask whether you made any money.
Do you have any other statements that she hadn't already been confronted with by Ms. Merchant?
Well, other than, I want to focus on, when you were telling them about your financial straits and you're living kind of month to month, that is what your financial status.
Tính là nói ra trong cuốn sách này bà tâm sự với những người này là trong một thời gian bà sống nghèo khổ này nọ đó.
Let me move on to my point here.
Tức là bây giờ nếu mà bà trong thời gian bà trong cuốn sách bà sống cuộc sống đó là không có dễ dàng như vậy đó, thì có nghĩa là bà gian lận đó, quý vị biết không? Tức là bây giờ họ không có bằng chứng gì hết, họ chỉ đem ra những cái bậy bạ như vậy để nói. Thành ra bây giờ nhìn bà Willis bà cười đó.
And there would be no record of it, correct?
that's not what I'm telling you, sir. That's not at all what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that throughout the course of my life, I have always kept cash in my house.
Rồi bây giờ trở lại với vấn đề tiền mặt, cuốn sách bị dẹp rồi. Bây giờ đưa qua tiền mặt.
I'd be ashamed of this because he would say it should be more. But that cash at times has ranged from $500 to maybe $9,000, and he would be like, that is not what I.
Vẫn là vấn đề tiền mặt.
I've always had that amount of money.
Bà nói bà lúc nào cũng có tiền mặt trong người hết. Cái chuyện này có thật nhá, vì tôi biết nhiều người lúc nào cũng phải yên ổn, cũng phải có tiền mặt hết đó.
Oh, we're gonna charge you $300 for the day. Well, I got American cash. Will you take it for $150? And so it's my practice to take money when I travel. We're not talking about a whole lot of money. We're going to the Bahamas. $1,500 in cash is in my pocket, or at the most $2,500. Belize was actually probably the most money I've ever taken.
Bà còn nói là bà đem theo bao nhiêu tiền, tùy theo đi chỗ đi, nhiều khi bà đi đó bà có tiền mặt, bà make deal, ví dụ giờ tôi trả tiền mặt thì tính tôi là bao nhiêu, đó, thành ra bà thích đem tiền mặt là như vậy.
So let's move to the specific yes or no here. Have you told us today that you would keep a cash hoard in your residence up to about $9,000? Yes or no?
Clip đợt luận này quá yếu đi quý vị.
Adult life, and so let's even be more specific than that. Probably from the time.
Your Honor, I'm only asking for yes or no rather than.
No, we have already covered this, so I
But yeah, but I'm trying.
Ông McAfee ông hết kiên nhẫn rồi, chúng ta đã nói chuyện này rồi.
Through the filibuster.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a lot of, and so it could be 2,000, it could be 1,500, it could be 7,500. It just depends on what you're doing at that time. What I'm telling you is when I traveled, I took cash. I find that when
bà nói khi mà bà đi á, bà đem tiền mặt.
American dollar does well, and it's good to have cash.
Và khi mà đi ra nước ngoài á, thì cái tiền mặt bên Mỹ nó có giá trị hơn là credit card. Có lý đó nha quý vị. Tức là khi mà đem tới nước đó đổi ra thì lúc nào nó cũng nhiều hơn. Cũng như những người đem tiền đi về Việt Nam thì nó nhiều hơn là đổi ở trong ngân hàng. Thì bà này bà rất là tận tiện.
You gotta talk up louder, Mr. Ham. Okay, we already covered that, Mr. Gillen. I need new ground here.
I'm asking the question, I'm trying to figure out how someone can have a tax
Then
lien,
ask that question.
but not.
Lanh đặng này thì quá dốt nát.
Said they had.
Well, Mr. can ask that exact same question.
Quá dốt nát.
So what's your question?
Cho đi ra luôn cho rồi.
I was gonna build on that to say,
No more bills.
Bậy bạ, nói hay thì cho nói dở rồi. Tầm bậy tầm bạ.
It's the same way you owe a bill and go
Tham nhũng.
well, now, have you ever used, did you say earlier that you used Cash App?
When I would pay Robin Bryant, I used Cash App.
What is Cash App for the record?
I don't need to know that for the record. Let's keep going.
Well, so if you're paying Robin with Cash App, why aren't you paying, allegedly paying Mr.
There's no alleged here.
Why aren't you paying allegedly Mr. Wade with Cash App?
I don't think Mr. Wade does Cash App.
Did you ask him?
I think he's told me he
Trời
doesn't
ơi.
Cash App.
Okay, so that's the reason why you didn't use Cash App,
He's sitting next to me. I hand him the money.
because there would be a record in Cash App of your making payments, correct?
Yes, but I didn't think that I was making a record in a personal relationship.
Because when you're filing your, and I know that I'm gonna move into this financial statement here. You were asked just a second ago about your non-disclosure form, or your disclosure form of an Exhibit 21, where we agree that Mr. Wade is a prohibited source, correct?
What I agree to is, I don't believe he's giving me gifts. You would like to classify these trips as gifts, but I've always paid my fair share on these trips, so I did not look at them as gifts. I don't think that what this is disclosing, and they can tell me if they mean something different, I don't think it means that if you go to dinner with somebody over the course of a year and it gets to 100, you're supposed to report it. If my understanding of that is wrong, I've probably been to lunches with a couple of people that over the course of a year, I paid.
Let me, prohibited source means,
We already went over this, Mr. Gillen. Mr. McDougal.
well, Your Honor, I have to lay the foundation here before I can follow up with my.
Ông Scott McAfee lại stop nữa không cho nói vì
Then, your 2022 disclosure form did not list any of the thousands and thousands of dollars that Mr. Wade paid for on trips that you were on. Isn't that correct?
That's because Mr. Wade was paid that money back, or he was paid due to the fact that I bought the plane ticket, or I paid for the hotel. There were never money that he gave me. That wasn't the nature of our relationship. You know, there's so many men, and Mr. Wade is one of them, where the nature of the relationship is they're just paying a woman. The nature of our relationship is companionship and friendship.
tức là bà xác định rõ ràng là cái vấn đề liên hệ của tôi đó không phải như bình thường. Chúng tôi chỉ liên hệ vấn đề companionship, còn tiền bạc á thì cái gì nó ra cái đó.
Showing that you have withdrawn the cash to pay
All
back.
right. Thank you, Mr. Gillen.
That's not accurate.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCullough, on behalf of Mr. Floyd. All right, and Mr. Cromwell on behalf of Ms. Latham.
Đó, bây giờ luật sư lên hết rồi, còn ai nữa không?
I have one question, Mr. Willis. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
In the time period between February 2021 and January 2022, you were saying that the year
Thú vị, tôi cũng là một câu hỏi. Bây giờ tôi phải kết luận ở đây để tôi còn phải đi làm nữa nha quý vị. Tức là hôm nay
Ms. Cross, I would imagine you have a number of topics to cover with Ms. Willis that'll take more than 10 to 15 minutes.
chỉ 10-15 phút nữa là phiên tòa đóng cửa, nhưng mà tôi nghĩ rằng đến đây là tôi xin dừng lại để đúc kết quý vị. Tức là những câu hỏi của bà Fani Willis giống như những câu hỏi của ông Nathan Wade muốn ám chỉ rằng họ có cái tình cảm trước khi mà bà thuê ổng, tức là trước tháng 11 năm 2021. Thứ hai là họ đặt cái nghi ngờ là bà Fani Willis nói rằng bà trả tiền lại cho ông Nguoi bằng tiền mặt. Đó là hai cái điều chính mà họ cứ mổ xẻ tới mổ xẻ lui ngày hôm nay, cho rằng những gì bà túng thiếu, cho nên trong có một thời gian bà túng thiếu, cho nên là bà dùng cái chức vụ này để mà thuê ông Nathan Wade để mà ông Nathan Wade làm việc rồi trả tiền lại cho bà. Đó vậy, chỉ có bao nhiêu đó thôi, muốn chứng minh rằng hai người này nói láo về hai cái vấn đề đó, và cho nên đưa ra nhiều câu hỏi không có liên quan gì hết. Chẳng hạn như đi Washington DC chung với nhau hay không, đi New York chung với nhau hay không, thì bà khẳng định là không. Cho nên cuối cùng ông Scott McAfee có vẻ rất là nóng giận, cho nên cứ nói lẹ lên, next question, và những câu hỏi nào mà không có liên hệ ông stop liền. Đó là những gì tôi tường trình với quý vị. Bây giờ xin lỗi nha, tôi phải đi làm quý vị, đến giờ rồi. Và xin hẹn gặp lại trong chương trình ngày mai. Cảm ơn quý vị rất nhiều. Nhớ đừng quên bấm like cũng như là subscribe nếu quý vị mới đến. Thì tôi đã kết luận ở đây nha quý vị. Ngày mai chúng ta sẽ nói thêm về cái vụ Stormy Daniels. Xin cảm ơn và xin chào tạm biệt. Xin hẹn gặp lại.